All right, welcome to day 8 of our 40-day challenge in the Psalms and in prayer. We're turning to the Lord today, and the psalm that we're going to focus on, our chapters Psalm 29 through 32. And the chapter we're going to focus on this morning is Psalm 32. Listen to these words. Blessed is he whose transgressions are forgiven, whose sins are covered. Blessed is the man whose sin the Lord does not count against him, and in whose spirit is no deceit. The psalmist here rightly identifies something. We are blessed when our sins have been forgiven, when our transgressions are covered. But how does that happen? Right? That's the question. How do I make that happen? How can I get my sins to be forgiven? And he goes on to answer that question. Look at this. When I kept silent, that means when I covered my sin, when I covered the fact that I was a sinner, that I was in trouble, that I needed Jesus, when I covered that, listen, when I kept silent, my bones wasted away through my groaning all day long. For day and night, your hand was heavy upon me. My strength was sapped as in the heat of summer. When we bury sin in our hearts, it is dangerous for us. It weighs heavy on us. We say we have a weight in our soul, right? And so that's what the psalmist is getting at. He's saying when we cover it up, when we carry it ourselves, it takes away all of our strength. But then look at verse 5. Then I acknowledged my sin to you and did not cover up my iniquity. I said, I will confess my transgressions to the Lord, and you forgave the guilt of my sin. And I want us to point to this. Remember verse 1. Blessed is the person whose sins are covered. And then here in verse 5, I acknowledged my sin and did not cover up my iniquity. See, it's great to have our sins covered, but it's terrible to cover them ourselves. It's great to have our sins covered because that means that they're done and gone with. But when we cover it ourselves, we haven't dealt with anything. We just bury it deep into our souls, and it festers there. And so what the psalmist is saying is, I turned to the Lord. I confessed my sins to the Lord, and you forgave me the guilt of my sin. You forgave me. God forgives us. They say confession is good for the soul. It's not because confession is magical in any way. It's because it is restoring a relationship with the Lord. He already knows what we've done. But we are called to confess to Him. And that part actually reminds me of another chapter. 1 John 1, verse 9 and 10. Verse 8, 9, and 10. If we claim to be without sin, if I cover up my sin myself, we deceive ourselves and the truth is not in us. That's verse 8. Verse 9. If we confess our sin, He is faithful and just and will forgive us our sins and purify us from all unrighteousness. What a promise, right? What a promise that our sins will be forgiven, that we will have, that they will not be held against us, that He is faithful and just, and He purifies us from all unrighteousness. And then verse 10, if we claim to have not sinned, we make Him out to be a liar, and His word has no place in our lives. In other words, if we say, I don't even have sins to confess, then we are calling the Lord liar. Because we know that we have sins that have gone unaddressed. We have problems in our lives. We have issues in our lives, and we need to restore that relationship with the Lord. So I love this psalm. It gives us a little bit of a pattern for how to address the problem of sin in our lives. It calls on us to turn to the Lord, to confess our sins to Him, and to believe that Jesus died for our sins, that He is able to save us, that He is able to cleanse us and purify us and draw Him closer to Himself. So there we go. Psalm 32 is today's psalm for the day. That's day 8 challenge. I look forward to seeing you again soon. Take some time this week to turn to the Lord, confess to Him, spend some time restoring that relationship. And I'll see you later on this week.